And I'm the CEO of United Way Northern New Jersey, and I have the honor and privilege of leading the Alice movement in that role. And today I'm here and excited to participate in this webinar because I also serve on the board of United Way Next, and I am the incoming chair, serving alongside Anne, who is our current chair this year. So welcome everyone. Looking forward to hearing from the one and only John Farden, certainly a favorite for many of us. And I think I'll turn it over to Anne.
Thank you, Kiran, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here with you. As Kiran said, I am the board chair for United Way Next, a role that I'm thoroughly enjoying this year. I can't believe how fast the year is going. It'll be by us before you know it. But today is really an exciting day for us. We are so pleased to have John Farden with us to provide an update on United Way 2030 and answer your questions, which I'm sure there will be many. John serves as the EVP of the Global Network Advancement. For those of us who worked at United Way worldwide, we remember when we had a U.S. president at United Way worldwide, and John is playing a similar role but expanded. So he is very knowledgeable, and we're really fortunate to have himself and to get us kicked off because he's got great content and we've got lots of questions. So, John, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Right, and it's great to be with you all, and great to see so many familiar faces and some new ones too. So I've been in my role for about 3 years, and I spent the majority of my nonprofit career at Save the Children. And my background is in education, and so was working at Save the Children and developing these what I thought were amazing education programs for rural America, and really loved my time there. And then I had an amazing opportunity to go and work in our international programs, and I got to see the way that Save the Children operated in the global context. And they were doing all of this work where they were engaging with partners and having community-led solutions, and really thinking about how to engage communities in solving their own challenges, right? And came back to the US, and I said to myself, we got to figure out how to do that here in the US. And suddenly I realized that there was this whole network of organizations called United Ways that were doing that work every day. And of course, I knew United Way as an organization that I had given money to as a workplace campaign for the first organization that I worked for. But I didn't really put United Way in that space of really being the community change agent in local communities. And so from that time till about 3 years ago, I was really excited about the notion of working for this network. And part of what makes it such a cool place to work is that we have this incredible legacy, right? And we've been here for 138 years in one form or another. And certainly joining y'all today, many of whom have long histories and experience with United Way. It's a part of what I love about this organization. So thank you all for your careers at United Way and your ongoing commitment to this incredible movement. Today, I know many of you were on a call last fall that Tom Lowry led. Tom is our Chief Transformation Officer, and a little bit jealous that Tom got invited to speak to Next before I did, but happy to follow in his footsteps as well. And I want to give you a little bit of bring you up to speed on where we are with United Way 2030 now. It really has moved from what is a really, like, if you think about it, a 20-year recognition that we need to move into the future. We need, nothing that we did was bad or wrong in the olden days, but the world has changed, and United Way needs to stay in front of those changes as well. And so it really has moved from that recognition to what I feel like is a really compelling and comprehensive plan for how we move forward. So I want to share an update there, and I'm also going to dig in on one of the initiatives in particular that one that I'm really excited about and haven't really talked a lot about with the network broadly. And so I'm going to be testing that out with you all today, and looking forward to hearing your feedback on what's resonating about it, and what makes sense, and what we should continue to clarify. So I'm going to share some slides, and I'll try to do it quickly so that we can spend most of our time together in conversation. And I don't have anything embarrassing on my desktop right now. That's good. And here we go. Okay. So again, we are talking about a a long history of transformation here. And today we're talking about the first chapter or the next chapter in that transformation, which we're calling United Way 2030. And Ann and I were talking before we actually got into the big room about the amazing work that's happened in the past to really move the United Way network forward. And when I think about the finest United Ways out in the country, I mean, they really are some of the best nonprofit organizations in the world. I think about the amazing work that Kiran and team are doing, for instance, in northern New Jersey, just incredible work. And so we're building upon a really strong foundation, but recognizing that United Way 2030 is going to be the next chapter in that journey together. And when we think about sort of the grounding for this strategic transformation, we're pinning it on these three notions around expanding our impact, lifting up our relevance, and strengthening sustainability. These are the pieces of the transformation that are going to move us forward. And I know Tom shared those ideas with you in the fall as well. And really thinking about what we want to become over the next 10 years, a premier global nonprofit serving human needs, growing our revenues, a thriving agile network of hyper local community-based organizations, the recognized provider of data-driven community solutions, the partner of choice to address communities' toughest challenges, a unified global delivery system that's the best in civil society, the leading developer of civil society talent, and the public's trusted top-of-mind resource for thriving communities. And so this is where we're thinking, and again, I hope everyone feels inspired and compelled by this list. And again, it's going to take us a lot to get there. And when I think about what it's going to take for us to get there, where I start, the how really begins with leveraging our superpowers as a network. And so when you think about this notion of impact, relevance, and sustainability, what are our superpowers in making that happen? And first and foremost, we are a community-based organization. We are of, for, and by communities. So when you think about impact, it's really about meeting community needs. And relevance, we are a trusted partner locally. Sustainability, we're growing our base of funders and supporters locally. And so that's a superpower that we have, and it makes us unique, our incredible local presence. But we have this other superpower, which is that we're globally positioned, and we're not taking enough advantage of that superpower in our opinion, and really sort of the theory of change around this strategy. So what would it look like for us to not only be meeting community needs, but also be scaling those proven solutions? What would it look like for us to not only be a trusted partner locally, but to be seen as a capable system that can really bring those things to scale? And for sustainability, what would it look like to not just be growing that base of funders and supporters locally, but to be leveraging transformational gifts? And we know that there are transformational funders out there who are making literally 9-figure gifts to networks, to systems like ours. And, I always say the only difference is we're a lot cooler than those other organizations are. But we are not seen as the partner of choice today. And if a funder cares about scale, they truly care about scale, there should be no other network that should be better positioned to do that work than the United Way network. And we want to make sure that that's true. So that's the how. And then, again, recognizing that we've been talking about transformation for many, many years. And, there's a lot of foundational work that has been done. And I think a lot of, for local United Ways, it's sort of like, okay, great, transformation, got it. What are we actually going to do? And so I know you've heard from Lexi Savage as well about the Thriving United Way framework. And the Thriving United Way framework was developed with input from thousands of our colleagues from across the network, and really lays out what it looks like for United Ways to show up for their communities and for each other, and is organized around community leadership and impact, brand, revenue, organizational foundation, and network citizenship. And we really see the Thriving United Way framework as the front door for local United Ways into the transformation. I've described it sort of like if we're all going to run this marathon together, Thriving United Way framework is your training program that's going to get you ready for that. And again, part of what we've done with Thriving United Way is develop a maturity model so that all United Ways can see themselves today. And there's nothing that's described in the maturity model that's a bad thing to be doing. If you're emerging in a certain practice, that's fantastic. That's right where you should be. And the question is, how do we together work to move towards thriving in all communities? And with the notion that every single community deserves to have a Thriving United Way. So that brings me to the actual plan for 2030. And again, we're starting with a high level goal, which is about communities, right? And really making sure that all communities are thriving. That's where we're moving in the long term. And by 2030, we want to be able to produce a report that really looks at a series of thriving community indicators and demonstrates progress or not in the different areas that we really care about. Those aligned with our 4 impact areas of youth opportunity, community resiliency, financial security, and healthy communities. And so, we have a vision statement for our organization that says every person in every community thrives. What does that mean? What does that actually look like? And how would we know it if we saw it? So we want to work towards developing an index that can help us measure that. And certainly Kiran and team, again, have been great guides for us in sort of thinking about what community-based data can look like as we start to tell a story and build a narrative about conditions on the ground for communities. And then the next layer is our strategic priorities and sort of how are we going to get there from an impact standpoint. And there are 3 strategic priorities that we focused on. They are communities strengthened through data, and our initiative there is called Pulse of the Community. Communities connected for impact at scale, that we're calling commitments to communities, and then communities mobilized for change, and that's pillars of the community, and that's what I'm going to dig into in just a minute. And I am really proud of where we've landed here with the strategic priorities. You probably have all heard the expression, if you've seen one United Way, you've seen one United Way, right? That's a common saying in the United Way network. And I think that's true to a certain extent because every community is a little bit different. So every United Way is a little bit different. But when I think about the best United Ways, when I think about the ones who are most impactful, they're doing some things consistently in their communities. And those things are, first and foremost, they're using data to shine a flashlight on the challenges that communities are facing and aligning their investments, aligning their strategies behind meeting those needs. The second is that they're bringing people together to solve problems, big problems, right? And the third is that they recognize that there are no silver bullets for solving those problems. And the way we're going to solve them is through systems change. So those are the initiatives that we have identified here for United Way 2030. And what if the things that we're so good at the community level, what if we were great at those things as a network? What if we were not only having that local community impact, but really able to scale that around data, big change at scale, and really building systems change? So today I'm going to focus mostly on the one on the right, but happy as we get into discussion to answer questions on any of these that you might have comments, questions, or concerns about. And then all of that is underpinned by a focus on our brand, relevant and leading brand, and we have two initiatives under that one, building a powerful united network, and then building sustainable resources. And so overall, this is 10 initiatives, and teams are working behind the scenes to sort of build out each of these. They're not all going to launch at the same time. We're moving forward on commitments to communities right in the middle, and contract to each other is sort of first out of the gate. We're building plans behind the scene, and we're doing it with a ton of input and engagement from our colleagues in local United Ways. And we just actually have wrapped up a series of 6 town halls with local United Ways, and probably had somewhere around 400 represented between those four meetings or 6 meetings. Okay, so I just want to spend just a second on contract to each other, because I think this is really a critical initiative coming out of the gate. And contract to each other is really about our shared accountability. And so again, I think a lot of the theory of change around this strategy is really, we are an incredible, federated organization with great local community impact. Independence is a part of our reason for being. We believe that the challenges that communities face are most often best solved by the people that live closest to those challenges. But what are the things that we can only accomplish together, right? And where does that accountability come in? So first and foremost, our number one accountability is United Ways being accountable to their communities. And the role that United Way Worldwide plays there is that we license our brand, our powerful brand, to local community organizations. And that communicates to those communities that this organization means something, right? This organization is worth a damn. And we need to make sure that that's true, and we need to provide the kinds of supports to make sure that United Ways are accountable to their communities. The second piece in the top right-hand corner is United Ways accountability to each other. We know that when amazing things are happening for one United Way, that lifts all boats. And conversely, we know when that United Ways are challenged, when there are reports in the paper or whatever else, that also has a resonating impact with neighbors and throughout the network. So that's the second piece, is really that accountability to each other. And then the third piece is United Way Worldwide's accountability to our dues paying members. And again, we've done a lot of work to sort of strengthen that over the last few years, and really focused in 2025 and 2026 on launching a member satisfaction survey. It's the first time we fielded that survey since 2021. I will say in 2021, 14% of the network reported being satisfied or very satisfied. We didn't field that survey again in 2022, but we brought it back again in 2025 and 2026, and we made great progress. We were at 68% at the end of the year, and pun intended, we're not satisfied with that, so we're going to continue to try to improve that number and field this survey on an annual basis going forward. We also have developed a set of transformation KPIs with input from about a dozen local United Way CEOs who worked with us on a project team to develop those KPIs. And that's to really hold us accountable for executing our United Way 2030 plan. And then the third piece is a member value report, which really specifically talks about what resources, tools, trainings, et cetera, are available to local United Ways, and how well are we taking advantage of those resources. And that's actually launching this week and will be available to all United Ways by the end of, or actually early next week after the holiday. So that's contract to each other. And I just wanted to start there because I feel like this notion of accountability is core to how we're going to move forward together. Again, we were talking before the meeting started about strategies, and there have been some great ones in United Way's history. And I was saying that I had an old boss that used to say, everybody's got a good strategy, right? It's not really about the words on the paper. It's about what we do together. And so I wanted to start here with the notion of shared accountability. And now I want to talk a little bit more about pillars of the community. And this is an initiative that is really one that I'm passionate about, and really, frankly, the work that brought me to United Way, and work that I'm excited about scaling throughout the network. So pillars of the community, and I put some AKAs here: backbone organizations, place-based partnerships, collective impact, convener. It's a lot of the way that we talk about United Way showing up in communities. And I will say in many ways, United Way is the original place-based organization. But the field has grown a lot in recent years. There's a whole sort of field of best practice and research about what this work can be. Some of the best place-based organizations in the country and in the world are United Ways, but there's a lot of practices we really want to figure out how to spread to other organizations. So again, when we think about pillars of the community, it's really about amplifying and expanding United Way's presence as a place-based backbone to address systems level community challenges. And so when you think about what that can look like in that local ecosystem of engaging community members and partners and advocates and donors and policymakers and volunteers all around changing a big population outcome. So whether that's working to end homelessness, whether that's working to alleviate poverty, whether that's working to ensure that every child has a great opportunity at a start to school and in life, coming together with all of these partners around a big goal like that. When you think about these conditions or levers of collective impact, what do they look like? A lot of times, we talk about being a backbone organization, and the question is, well, what does that actually mean, and what does that look like? And it starts with developing a common agenda and really bringing partners together to say, here's a shared vision and an understanding of the problem that we're trying to collectively solve. The second piece is around shared measurement and making sure that we're thinking about the problem in the same way and measuring progress against that challenge. The third is mutually reinforcing activities. Often it's not a challenge of not having not-profit organizations working on particular issues, but getting them to actually align their contributions so that we can be a bit more coordinated and more impactful collectively. The next one is around continuous improvement and communication. How do we make sure that we're constantly learning from the work that we're doing? And then the final pillar here is a backbone organization, really backbone support. And we see more and more United Ways finding ways to step into that role and sort of make sure all of these other pieces are happening consistently. As we've gotten into this work and sort of done our assessment across the network, there are many best practices that come to mind. But one in particular that I want to highlight is United Way of Salt Lake's Utah Promise Initiative. And this is really in the space of cradle to career work. And really thinking about what are those developmental milestones across that cradle to career continuum, and how do we bring partners together to meet those needs and really make sure that we're making progress on those key indicators along that continuum. So United Way of Salt Lake convenes these partnerships, but they also provide specific interventions along the way through high quality preschool programs, through community schools partnerships, through after school programming, through mentoring and tutoring, through FAFSA assistance for college access and readiness, and then workforce preparedness. And then again, the foundation of that is 211, financially stable families and healthy children and families. And so all of this fits together into a different kind of approach to showing up for communities. And again, lots and lots of examples across the network of United Way's leaning in this space. But I think, as far as quality of the work that's happening, Utah's Promise and United Way of Salt Lake are right at the top of that list. And happy to answer more questions about that as we get into that conversation. So we had an idea that we could do more of this work across the network, and we're really thankful to get support from Blue Meridian partners to really help to scale this work. And Blue Meridian are deep-pocketed at this point and funding a lot of communities across the country with $25–50 million investments in place-based work. We did not have that many zeros in our initial gift from Blue Meridian, but hope we can grow to that over time. And this is really a discovery project in a lot of ways. So really what we're looking at is three things. Number one, which is really unique to United Way and United Way's place-based work, is thinking about how can 211 data be a key driver of place-based work. And so that work is going on currently. The second is looking at our current local place-based backbones and understanding what does it look like to be a backbone organization? What does it look like to be ready to be a backbone organization? And how do we start to build the tools, supports, and resources to help more United Ways move into that space? And then the final piece is really building out a playbook and a toolkit to help more and more United Ways move into this space with confidence and quality. And so this is a 2-year project. It will wrap up in the third quarter of 2027. And then we hope to be back at the table with Blue Meridian talking about how we expand this work even more across the network. And again, we've got 3 impact priorities, and this is one of the 3. So we're really putting a lot of emphasis on the importance of this backbone role that so many United Ways already play, but we think can really be a unique niche for even more United Ways going forward. So that is the last, actually, I've got one more slide, which is just like, this is a totally schematic, and like I made it up. I haven't vetted it with a lot of other people, but just thinking about this moment that we're in and how some of this work comes together and like the role that United Ways are playing in communities. And I like to think, and the thing that attracted me to this organization is our ability to do systems change work, our ability to strengthen systems within communities. And that really is around these place-based partnerships. I mean, if we can, think about like, how do we create a policy environment and a funding environment and a partnership environment locally that changes systems for the better? But we also have to recognize that we're in a moment when our systems are broken, right? And they're not meeting the needs of our communities. And so we can't just focus on systems change. We also have to think about how are we immediately meeting the needs of individuals. And so I think there are these two other circles sort of speak to that in one way or another. One is that we've got this incredible resource with 211 that can provide connections to community resources. And the second is that we see more and more United Ways moving into this community navigator space. And this looks like a lot of different things in a lot of different communities. It might look like for the 140 United Ways that lead community school efforts locally, it might look like a community school coordinator. For United Ways that are engaged in community health worker kind of work, it might look like a community health worker. For United Ways running prosperity centers or economic opportunity centers in their communities, it might look like a financial coach. But all of these folks that are sort of moving into this community navigator space, including our 211 operators. And I think as we start to think about sort of that spot right in the middle, that bullseye that would be that overlap of all 3 of these circles, there's a huge opportunity for United Way and an opportunity that simply no one else is positioned to play this role in the way that United Way is thinking about system change, but also meeting community needs through a combination of community navigation and 211. And so and just like quickly, there are these transformational partners that we have in mind with deep pockets to invest in this kind of work. And there seems to be like an alignment around wanting to invest in 211, wanting to invest in community navigators, and wanting to invest in these place-based partnerships. So all of these funders we're having active conversations about how to support this work really scaling over time. So I hope that's exciting to everyone. I think it's really like a promising initiative that it is a key part of our strategy as we move towards 2030. I kind of zoomed in on one section here, and maybe as we get into the conversation, happy to pull up sort of the overview or any other slides that might be helpful as we think about the strategy in general. But again, this pillars of the community work is something that I'm really personally passionate about and excited about United Way leaning into over the next 5 years. So I will stop there and see what kinds of questions y'all have for me.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
John. Go ahead, Ivy.
I was just going to say thank you so much, John, and do a couple of quick notes, and then I'll hand it back over to Anne. So before we head into the Q&A, if there's anybody that has a meeting that they have to hop off to, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we will try to lift them up for you and answer them in the recording. And we will make sure that you also get the recording, the slides, and everything after the session as well. And we just want to say thank you for joining us, as well as John and Kiran, and then a special shout out to our sponsors, and that's going to be Mutual of America, Front Stream, Third Sector Company, Board Build, and UPIC Solutions for supporting these events, as well as our mentorship program. And lastly, we hope you'll just fill out our event survey feedback survey at the end of this. When you guys do hop off, it is only 3 questions, but it helps us make sure that you guys are enjoying our speakers like John, the content, and just make sure that we are giving you the best member experience possible. So I will hand it back over to Anne or anyone that has questions, and that's the last of my announcements.
Thanks,
And
Ivy.
I didn't realize that Deborah was on. Deborah, it's great to see you, and glad to know you're on, to hear me call out your amazing work that you laid the foundation for, and then the amazing work that Bill has carried forward.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that very much.
Anything else you want to share, Deborah?
It's really, really hard work. I will share that. And it takes a lot of courage because you get a lot of pushback in the beginning. And that's the thing that I think stops people from doing it is that it's hard. You have to change your entire business model, your entire way of thinking. And we lost board members, we lost community partners, but boy, did we gain a lot more. And that work goes on, and we've got a really strong partnership now with Blue Meridian, and they've just made a sizable investment and have committed to another huge investment, but we have to match it from the community. So this work is not easy, but it's worth every minute of it. So that's my pitch.
I also see my pal Isabel on the phone, who leads 3 backbone partnerships in Connecticut, and has been an amazing supporter, amazing help to me, and personally sort of shaping out this initiative and working with our collective colleague Lauren on sort of shaping out this work. So thanks, Isabel.
Great. Thank you. We've got some questions in the chat. The first is from Robert. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Robert. Any thoughts on Edna McConnell Clark Foundation?
I would bet, Robert, you put that in there because you have some thoughts. You want to just share what they are? And
I just think there's an opportunity there.
yeah,
they're a large foundation, and they worked with an organization in California that really invested to replicate a model very similar to what you're talking about. So it just came to mind immediately as you were highlighting the foundation. So
yeah, and I haven't worked with them directly, but we'll share that feedback with our fundraising team and see what kind of connections we have there. Thank you.
mm-hmm.
Great. Thank
And
you.
it's Benavides.
Benavides, as I'm looking at it. Thank you very much.
No
Appreciate
worries. No worries.
Mary Tyler John is thanking you for the update, and asks, based on the survey results, please share the insights you and colleagues determined how the input supports the 2030 direction.
And which survey is this, Mary?
It was the survey results you mentioned. Hello, everyone. It was the survey results you mentioned, 14% to 60 plus percent.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, so lots and lots of information in that satisfaction survey. And again, the number that I shared is sort of the top line. How would you rate your satisfaction with United Way worldwide? And so again, we use a 5-point, from very, very dissatisfied up to very satisfied 5-point scale. And so anything that's in the 4 or the 5, we consider that a satisfied, and that's the one that moved from 14 to 68%. There's lots and lots of other information in the satisfaction survey, and a lot of it has to do with individual products, teams, services that United Way provides. And so we've had a number of discussions since that survey was fielded with individual teams about, hey, this thing that you're doing, this donor portal, or this, the Thriving United Way self-assessment, or the impact survey is not as popular as maybe it should be. How do we want to address that over time? So we're using all of that data to get better. I will say that we survey the network a lot. For those of you who are in the network now or have been recently, we know there are a lot of surveys, and we're working really hard to make sure that one of the fundamental principles around data collection is the folks that are sharing their data should be the ones that benefit from that data collection. And so we're working really hard to make that true. We have a great new portal on United Way online called United by Data that has all of those, our impact data, our revenue data, our Thriving United Way top line data that really starts to disaggregate, how are we doing as a network? If you're a United Way that's, let's say, a mid-sized city with education and health programs, and you want to see who else is doing similar work to us, that our tools should be able to facilitate that, and we're getting much closer to that now. In terms of input that shaped our strategy, we had a lot of conversations with United Ways. We worked in the early stages with McKinsey to help sort of do the initial framing around our strategy. Again, we had the foundation to build upon of the Thriving United Way framework, which again was informed by the network. But really where we landed with the strategic initiatives in particular, I think answers the question, what are the things that we as a network can only do together? We are a decentralized organization. We're accomplishing a lot in communities. We believe strongly in the notion of local independence and autonomy in communities. But what are the things that we can only do together? And so when we thought about what those things were from the impact priority, it is we need to do a better job collectively using our data, right? And how do we build that infrastructure across the network? We have great results in many of our local communities, but I mentioned community schools before. Who sees United Way as a national leader in community schools? We're one of the very best in that space, yet we're not sort of often enough puffing out our chests and saying we are a leader in that space, or the millions and millions of dollars we put back in the pockets of low and moderate income tax filers through the VITA program. Who knows that we are a national leader there? And so how do we start to own that space? That really shows up in this notion of commitments to communities. And what we want to do in 2026 is to roll out the first 2 commitments to communities, and they will be around youth opportunity and community resiliency. We're in the early days of conversations about what exactly those commitments will be, but some of those early conversations that I'm excited about are, for instance, we know that we need about 14 million high quality early learning slots across the country. We know that today we have 10 million. So there's a 4 million gap, right? We need 4 million more high quality early learning slots. What could United Ways do collectively to close that gap by 250,000, by 500,000, by 1 million over the next 5 years, right? And so something like that would really say to policymakers, to the public, to funders, to others, yes, we are a community-based organization, but when you zoom out and you look at the aggregate impact that this incredible network is having, we are truly moving the needle at scale. And that's going to open up new opportunities for us, we believe, with different kinds of funders. So that's the second piece around that commitments to community piece. And then I just talked about the third, which is that building that local place-based infrastructure. And again, we feel like those are all areas where local United Ways can work really hard in their communities, but unless we're learning from each other, unless we're speaking more collectively with one voice, unless we're leveraging our scale, we're leaving opportunity on the table.
Other questions?
I have
I'll ask it.
one.
Go ahead.
Oh, I have one. Ivy put out on the LinkedIn group yesterday, if any of us had questions in advance, we could ask in the chat in the LinkedIn group. So John, I know we know each other pretty well, but I really was interested more on a personal side. What's your favorite part of your job?
That is an easy one. I mean, it is going out and getting a chance to interact with my local United Way colleagues. I mean, I think I can't tell you how many times over the last few years, 3 years I've been here, that I've met with a local United Way, and I'm like, whoa, United Way can do that thing, and there are just so many different ways that we're showing up in communities. And it just is always constantly amazing to me. I was lucky earlier this week to go up to Philadelphia and meet with Bill Golder and his team and hear about the organizational transformation that they're in the midst of, and go to a donor event with him and hear him describe the amazing work that they're doing. And it's just so incredible to think about, that we have 1,000 laboratories across the country and around the world where that's happening in every single one of those communities. I feel really, really blessed to get a chance to work with so many incredible dynamic leaders. And at the same time, like one of the ways I like to think about how much I want to do a job is like what is the potential here, and what is our current performance, and how big is that gap? And I love to find places where the gap is significant, right? Because I think that makes it fun, right? To come in and like every single day I can like roll up my sleeves and I can fix something, and I can work with my team. We can make something better, and y'all can watch us, right? Y'all can watch us in the act of improving, in the act of getting better. And that's really exciting to me. And I feel like there isn't another system, there isn't another organization with a higher bar for what our potential is. And so whatever our performance is today, like we got a long way to go. And it's really exciting for me to think about like how are we going to get there together. So I think those two pieces, it's the amazing work that's already happening, and then thinking about how can we all get there together, right? How can we look at a quote that Tom, who you have heard from before, uses often, is that the future has already arrived. It just is not evenly distributed, right? And so what would it look like to get that future out into as many places as possible? And again, when I think about our finest United Ways, they are the best organizations in the whole darn country. And how do we have more and more of those as time goes by?
Thank you.
Dick F., did you have a question?
Well, it's not on point. It deals with the leadership search going on at United Way Worldwide. So, if John, if you have anything to share with us about that search, and I'm particularly interested if there is a job description that's been written, what are the qualifications that the search committee is looking for?
Yeah. So, and Dick, it's great to see you, and you know that I was with DJ Hampton a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about you and talking about the work that you had done, and sort of documenting the various phases and stages of United Way's evolution. And so, know that as we move into this next phase, we're definitely thinking about you and your work, and sort of pulling together that history over time. So, thank you for that. And as far as the CEO search goes, I will tell you what has been communicated to us, and this has also been communicated broadly to the network, that they are going to do a robust search, and it will be open, and that every intention from our board is that the next CEO will be someone that comes from the United Way network in some way and touches our system in some way. So I think that that's something that local leaders have been quite excited about. I'll say that I came from outside of the United Way. I spent the bulk of my career at Save the Children, and I know that sort of fresh perspective, I hope that fresh perspective has also been useful. But we're just such a complicated animal at United Way that like having someone that sort of knows the ropes and can build upon the momentum that we've already started, I think is absolutely key. So I'm really thrilled that that's been the board's perspective. As far as the search process timing, I don't have more clarity on that other than what Yuri has already shared, which is that we expect Rosie to be in her role for 6 to 12 months, and it's been about 3 so far. And I think in terms of Rosie coming into this role, you couldn't have picked a better person to come into the role. I mean, somebody who has been on our board, who has been the co-chair of our Network Advisory Council for several years, who is right here in the district. And I've seen Rosie everywhere from leading a volunteer engagement opportunity to sitting in our boardroom, right? And so she has that sort of breadth of experience with us, which I think has been really great. And I'll say she's brought a calming force to our workforce as well. And we're in it for a period of time with her in that role for sure. I don't know that she's made any decisions about her interest in being in that role long term. So we'll leave it to her to speak to that at some other time. And we have also shifted our priority in terms of filling positions to getting a couple of our other key leadership roles filled. I think there was a debate for a moment about whether we should wait to get the CEO in place to recruit and hire a chief development officer. We've been without a chief development officer since October, and so we've had both of those key fundraising roles open. And the decision has been made that we need to move forward on the chief development officer. We can't wait anymore. And so that recruitment I know is actively underway, and hope to get that filled, prior to having the CEO search completed. So that's where we are now. That's all the information I've got to share with you today. But again, I know that the board has committed to sort of being transparent about the process once it kicks off in earnest.
Well, thank you very much, John. And thank you also for an excellent briefing.
Thank you.
So, John, it's Ann Fox. I have a couple of thoughts as we were just talking before we started about kind of what came before and where we are now. Couple things. One, I'm delighted to see 211 so prominent in this work. I can remember literally water cooler conversations, because we had them back then, but water cooler conversations about 211 and the value that it could bring to the work. And gosh, how could we get there? And so to see that evolution is very exciting. Also, I'm reminded by Deborah the longevity of this work, and the incredible amount of change that it encompasses, and the number of people that need to come along. And maybe we've been on the right track all along. It's been a very slow track, but we know it's going to be slow, because this is really significant change that we're looking to achieve. And so I guess my one question to you, and this is, I think, relevant, having that you just came off a donor event, how are individual donors embracing this work? How do they understand it? How are we talking about it? Because, as you said, our work is very complicated. And having worked in complicated federated organizations almost my entire career, I've come to learn that that's really not a good answer, because it shuts people down. So I'm just curious to hear what you're experiencing as you talk to individual donors more so. I think big funders, they get it. They're in this all the time. They understand the language.
Yeah.
So that's my question.
Yeah, so maybe a couple of answers to that. Like number one is, I think for the work that I talked about specifically today, there's a specific donor audience for that. And I know Deborah and Isabel could speak to this. I know I've had lots of conversations with Bill about like the struggle in getting this to resonate with even with some of our traditional corporate partners. It's really kind of like the sweetheart of the foundation space right now, and some major funders there, but not as much in other spaces. Deborah, I see you came on.
I was just gonna say, people's eyes glaze over when you try and describe what we're talking about. So what we decided a long time ago is to describe a vision rather than the sausage being made, and that seems to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my good pals at Strive Together, who is a great partner of Salt Lake, has said to me that he's been doing this work for 20 years and his mother still doesn't know what he does for a living. So that that's just part of the nature of that work. I do think when it comes to United Way's value proposition overall, I think there are a lot of United Ways that just like from a blocking and tackling standpoint, like just need to update the value proposition, right? And we know for all donors, but particularly for younger donors, they don't care that we're a blue chip nonprofit organization. They don't care that we've got the United Way logo. That doesn't resonate with them. They want to know, what is the problem that you're solving for our community and how can I be involved in that, right? And so we see a lot of United Ways who have made that shift. And I think starting with, and that's one thing that actually aligns well with the collective impact work, is starting with a problem statement that's like, it's ridiculous in our community and our nation, as wealthy as we are, that kids are going to bed at night hungry, or that we have, folks in our communities that can't afford the most basic necessity, which is a safe place to sleep at night, right? That, like, these are problems that we know our communities face. And when you start to talk about problem solving in that way, that resonates with the younger donors, but also it opens us up to have a different kind of conversation with some of our historic partners, right? Who are in some cases, like, sorry to say it, bored to death with their relationship with United Way, and they want something new and different to talk about. And I'm sorry that Kiran has signed off, because I think about the Alice at Work initiative, which is really about going in and talking with employers about creating employee friendly workspaces, right? And that opens up a new conversation with a partner that maybe we've had for 65 years, and suddenly we're entering into a shared value conversation that's not about like, hey, we're back to do the annual campaign again, but about how can we help your employees be more productive and better community members, right? And so being able to have those kinds of shifts, and it begins with moving away from just saying, well, the old value proposition, which was that you as a regular old donor couldn't possibly know who all the good nonprofits are in our community. So give us your money and we'll figure that out for you. That can still be a piece of the value proposition, but it's got to move towards, like, what is the problem that we are collectively endeavoring to solve on behalf of our community members?
Great. Other questions? We've got time for probably one more.
I have a question, Carol. Hi, John.
Hi.
This is Nan Eaton. One of my questions would be, I know a lot of United Ways, including in Central New York, are partnering with employers to work with individual employees to help with financial matters, help them. Is that part of a toolkit that you're looking to put together to distribute throughout the network? Because prior to my finishing my time, every employer I spoke to was interested in our program. I mean, it was unanimous. And one of the employers had actually said, I had an employee in my office last week who needed a $2,000 emergency loan. And that was something we were able to do. So I just wonder where the plans are in terms of getting more of that information to United Ways about how to do that.
Yeah. So there's so many cool things happening in that space. And I think about, like, one of my favorite things, and I've mentioned it, this will be the third time I've mentioned it, is community schools, right? And part of what I love about community schools is, like, that's where the kids are, right? And, like, when the kids go to school, where do their parents go? They go to work, for crying out loud. So why aren't we thinking about sort of a workplace as that sort of same place-based kind of initiative? And the reality is many United Ways are. So I think about the great work that we're doing with the FINRA Foundation around financial literacy at work, and that's something that's happening. And I don't know if you're doing that in Syracuse, but they are in Rochester and Buffalo.
Yep,
And
we are in Syracuse.
great. So there's that program, which again we're looking at ways with FINRA Foundation to scale that. I think about the amazing work that they're doing in Chattanooga. They have a branded initiative there called United for Working Families, which is really building upon the Alice at Work movement. And then thinking about in Charleston, and Trident United Way has a new program called Thrive at Work, which is really about how do we match individuals up with coaches to help them with all of those financial literacy kind of initiatives, right? And so I think that the question is like, how do we as a network let 1,000 flowers bloom in some cases, but then start to learn from that and scale it really, really quickly for the things that are working. I know that DJ is hot and heavy on scaling Thrive at Work from Charleston across the network. I think DJ's a next member too. He's not here today, but probably comes to a lot of these meetings. And you know, I think scaling that across the network is exciting. I know that Kiran and team are working hard on the Alice at Work work and figuring out how to help that scale. And then the FINRA work, I think, is another example. Again, part of what we're thinking about with these commitments to communities is to not actually focus on like what is a specific intervention, but to really start at what's the problem we're trying to solve together. So it may be around, you know, percentage of households living below the Alice threshold, right? That might be something that we want to say, how could we move the needle on that over the next 5 years? And then that workplace, that work-based, employer-based, employee-focused portfolio of work becomes like the strategies that sort of ladder up to that broader goal. Again, I think part of the beauty of this network is that we can let 1,000 flowers bloom, but we frankly have not been good enough at learning from those examples and then figuring out how to scale them over time.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, John. So let 1,000 flowers bloom. I haven't heard that since I worked at United Way. I think we use that term a lot. Well, I'm going to thank you, John, very much for this presentation. As you said earlier, I think before we started, we could talk for 6 hours on this topic, and we probably could talk for 6 days on it. But it's a great conversation this afternoon, and just flew right by. But please know that United Way Next is excited to partner with United Way Worldwide in any way that we can to help move this work forward. We are committed to making the world a better place still, whether we're working professionally in the field, getting paid, or volunteering, or a combination of both. So we stand ready to help. And this was a great way to spend time together. I'll turn it over to Carol to close us out. And again, thank you, and thanks to everybody who joined us today.
Thank you, Anne. Well, first, I want to say thanks to Anne and John and Kiran for being here today, facilitating the conversation. John, it was a great presentation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks at the Northeast Regional Conference. We also want to just say thanks to all of you for being here. There was such great conversation, lots of great comments in the chat. A few folks reached out about email addresses for the United Way Salt Lake contact. So if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Ivy will send out a follow-up email probably early next week, just because of the timing of the session, with a lot of the information that was shared, some of the resources that were in the chat. So be looking for that. And for anyone who didn't participate today, but will be listening to this later, we missed you, and we hope to see you at the next event. I'm going to turn it over to Ivy, because I want her to be able to highlight a couple upcoming events that we have, just to make sure they get on your calendar early. And with that said, before I close it out, I'll just say thanks again to each and every one of you. It means a lot to see you all here. I hope you have a wonderful, restful, and relaxing Memorial Day weekend. And Ivy, I'll let you take us home.
Thank you so much again, everybody. I dropped them in the chat, but we will have another United Way Worldwide Town Hall coming up in October. And then our next event is actually next week. It's AI and Privacy for Humans in Real Life with Andy Abrams. And we have a great lineup of events for personal and professional development. Plus, if you guys don't mind filling out the 3-question survey at the end of this call, then we can make sure that all of the events are educational, informative, fun, engaging, all of the things for you, and make sure you're having the best member experience.